Welcome in. Today, we're diving into a topic near and dear to anyone who's ever felt that mix of excitement and, oh, wow, what now? That comes with stepping into a new leadership role.
Yeah, those first few months can be a real make or break period.
Exactly. So, we're going to equip you with some serious strategic thinking from Michael Watkins' book, The First 90 Days. It's a classic for a reason, practically a rite of passage for anyone moving up the ranks, but we're adding another layer to this deep dive.
We're bringing in the real world experience of executive coach Miguel Nogueral. He's not only used these principles himself at companies like Motorola and Zebra Technologies, but he's also coached countless leaders through these transitions.
So think of this as the first 90 days, field tested and turbocharged. Now, Watkins lays out 8 key principles, which is great, but let's be honest, who has time to memorize 8 of anything when you're still figuring out where the coffee machine is in your new office?
That's where Nogueril's experience becomes invaluable. He, along with other executive coaches, have honed in on the 5 most critical principles for those early days, the ones that truly set the stage for long-term success.
It's like a greatest hits album, but for leadership transitions.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how Nogueral takes these core ideas from Watkins and makes them even more actionable, especially for the complexities of today's business landscape.
Okay, so less theory, more tactical. I'm ready. What's the first thing new leaders need to absolutely nail?
It might sound counterintuitive, but the first step is hitting pause on all the ideas you have about what needs to change. Watkins calls it matching strategy to situation. But Nogueral gets super specific. He says, diagnose strategic context early.
It's like giving your new job a checkup before you start prescribing solutions.
Exactly. Is this a turnaround situation where you need to be a decisive change maker? Or is it about sustaining success, which requires a more collaborative approach? Maybe it's even a startup environment where you need to build everything from scratch. Each scenario demands a different playbook.
So before you even think about making your mark, you need to understand the terrain you're standing on. That makes a lot of sense. But what happens if you get that initial diagnosis wrong?
Well, Nogueral shares a cautionary tale about a division leader who stepped into a company with plummeting profits and morale in the basement. He went in thinking it was about making incremental improvements. In reality, it was a full-blown crisis demanding a complete turnaround,
Ouch, talk about misreading the room.
and the consequences were immediate. He faced massive pushback because his team needed a leader ready to tackle the crisis head-on, not someone focused on minor tweaks. It wasn't until he shifted gears to prioritize stabilization and rebuilding trust that things started to improve.
That's a powerful reminder that understanding the context isn't just some theoretical exercise. It directly impacts your ability to lead effectively.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the second crucial element, which often trips up even seasoned leaders. They assume they know what success looks like in this new role.
But they haven't actually confirmed that with the people who are ultimately going to be evaluating their performance, their boss and key stakeholders.
You hit the nail on the head. And this is where Nogueril's concept of a success blueprint comes into play. It's not enough to have vague ideas about goals. You need a crystal clear roadmap co-created with those who hold the keys to your success.
So it's about having those sometimes uncomfortable conversations very early on to align on expectations. What are some specific things leaders should be clarifying when they're creating the success blueprint?
It's more than just a list of goals. It's about asking those critical questions that often get overlooked. What are the top priorities for this role, both in the short term and long term? How will success be measured, and what are the specific metrics that matter most? And crucially, what resources or support will be needed to achieve these goals?
It's like that old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Except in this case, getting lost could mean derailing your entire leadership journey.
Exactly. And Nogueral has a great example of how this plays out in the real world. He talks about a senior executive who stepped into a role at a consumer goods company. He assumed his main objective was to drive revenue growth. Sounds pretty standard, right?
Makes sense, especially in the consumer goods world.
Well, it turned out that his boss was far more concerned with cost cutting and improving profitability.
Mm.
Talk about misaligned priorities.
Ouch, that could lead to some awkward performance reviews. What happened in that situation?
Fortunately, this executive was proactive. He initiated a conversation with his boss and other stakeholders, and they hashed out a clear success blueprint. They clarified the key objectives, timelines, and even negotiated the resources he would need to be successful.
So it wasn't just about clarifying expectations, but about shaping them in a way that set him up for success?
Precisely.
Ah,
And that's the power of having those upfront conversations, even if they feel a bit uncomfortable at first. It's about proactively aligning on what success looks like and how you'll get there together.
that's such an important point. Okay, so we've diagnosed the strategic context and we've created a shared success blueprint. What's the next crucial element new leaders need to master?
This next one is all about people skills, about building the right relationships to support your success. Watkins calls it building alliances, but No Girl takes it a step further, emphasizing building strategic alliances early.
And I'm sensing a theme here. Early action seems to be critical for all of this. But why the emphasis on strategic alliances? Aren't all alliances important when you're new to a role?
They are, but No Girl highlights that it's not just about being friendly or networking broadly. It's about identifying those key influencers, both formal and informal, who can have a significant impact on your ability to achieve your goals.
It's about understanding the lay of the land, figuring out who holds the power to help you move forward or potentially stand in your way.
Exactly. And it's especially important in large organizations where there's often a lot happening beneath the surface, those unspoken rules and power dynamics that can make or break even the most well-intentioned initiatives.
So it's like you've got your map and compass with your success blueprint, but now you need to find the local guides who can help you navigate the terrain. How do you go about building those relationships, especially when you're new?
No Girl recommends a multi-pronged approach. It starts with those deep dive assessments with key leaders to understand the operational landscape. What are the biggest challenges? What's working well? Where are the potential roadblocks?
It's like you're gathering intel before you launch a major campaign.
Exactly. But it's not just about talking to those at the top. He also emphasizes the importance of listening tours with team members at all levels. This is about getting a feel for the culture morale and understanding how things really work from the ground up.
It reminds me of that classic advice you have two ears and one mouth, and you should use them proportionally.
I love that. And finally, it's about good old-fashioned stakeholder mapping. This is where you connect the dots, identifying those hidden influencers who may not be on the org chart, but hold a surprising amount of sway,
Those are the people who really know where the bodies are buried, so to speak.
and whose buy-in you'll need to achieve lasting change. Now, remember that leader we talked about earlier, the one who faced resistance when he misread the context?
The one who thought he could just tinker around the edges.
Exactly. Well, he credits listening tours and what he called cultural audits as key to turning the situation around. By truly listening to his team, he uncovered the root causes of their resistance and was able to address them head on.
It's amazing how much insight you can gain when you stop trying to impress everyone with your brilliance and simply listen with the intention to understand.
It's a game changer.
Mm.
But even with the best intel and a network of strategic alliances, you won't get very far if you don't have the entire team on board with your vision for the future. And that brings us to our next critical element. It's not enough to just have vision in your head. Even if you've gone through all the steps of diagnosing the context, building a success blueprint.
It's got to be a shared vision, right?
Yeah.
Something everyone understands and feels connected to.
You got it. Watkins talks about the importance of achieving alignment, but Nogueral adds a really important layer of nuance to this.
I'm sensing a theme here. Nogueral is all about taking these solid principles and making them even more practical, more actionable.
He really does. He calls this one achieving alignment through vision clarity. And it's about making sure everyone at all levels understands not just the what, but the why behind the direction you're heading.
So it's not just about telling people, here's the plan, now go forth and execute. It's about bringing them along on the journey, making them feel like they're a part of something bigger.
Yeah, and that's where the co-creation aspect comes into play. Instead of coming in with a preset vision and expecting everyone to just fall in line, Nogueral really encourages leaders to involve their teams in the process right from the get-go.
So tap into that collective intelligence, those diverse perspectives that already exist within your team.
It's like a gold mine, and it does wonders for building buy-in and ownership. Nogueral actually shared a story with me about a general manager he worked with who inherited a very siloed team. Everyone was doing their own thing, and there was very little collaboration or sense of a shared purpose.
Sounds like a recipe for inefficiency, if not outright chaos.
It was definitely a challenge. So to break down those silos and get everyone on the same page, they organized a series of what they called alignment workshops.
Alignment workshops. Tell me more about how those worked.
They brought in representatives from all levels and departments, not just the leadership team. And through a combination of structured strategy sessions, brainstorming exercises, and even some team building activities, they were able to define what success looked like for them as a collective unit.
And I'm guessing those weren't just your typical boring corporate meetings.
Not at all. They used creative exercises, brought in outside facilitators, and really focused on making it an engaging and inclusive experience for everyone.
Okay, but did they actually achieve any real alignment, or was it just a feel-good exercise?
The results were pretty remarkable. Within a few months, this team went from being fragmented and siloed to a cohesive unit. They were more productive, morale significantly improved, and they were actually excited about the work they were doing together. And it all stemmed from that shared vision they created together.
It's proof that when people feel heard and understood, when they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, they're capable of achieving incredible things.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm.
And that brings us to the final and arguably most critical element of navigating those first 90 days as a new leader, building your team.
And I'm guessing it's not just about assembling a team, but about building a high-performing team that can actually execute on that shared vision we were just talking about.
You got it. Watkins refers to this as building the team, but as always, Nogueral gets laser focused calling it building a high-performance team early on.
So no pressure, right. But seriously, how do you even begin to assess the team you've inherited, especially if you're new to the organization or department?
Nogueral recommends a really structured approach. He suggests a 45-day team audit where you use a combination of individual interviews, group discussions, and even some skill assessments to get a clear picture of each team member's strengths, weaknesses, and aspirations.
So it's about gathering data, not just relying on gut feelings or first impressions.
Absolutely. You want to be as objective as possible in your evaluation. And once you have that clear picture, you can start making strategic decisions.
And those decisions might involve some tough calls. What if you inherit a team that's, well, let's just say they're not exactly firing on all cylinders?
That's a common fear for new leaders, and rightfully so. But as Nogueral points out, avoiding those tough decisions will only hurt you in the long run.
It's like that saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. But in this case, we're talking about people's careers, so it's important to handle those decisions with sensitivity.
100%. Nogueral stresses the importance of transparency and clear communication throughout the entire process.
So even if you have to make changes like letting someone go or shifting roles, it's about doing it with respect and empathy.
And providing as much support as possible to help those affected navigate the transition. Remember, building a high-performing team isn't always about making sweeping changes. Sometimes it's about recognizing hidden talents, providing opportunities for growth and development, and creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to do their best work.
It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive and contribute their unique strengths.
Exactly. And sometimes it does mean making tough decisions to ensure you have the right people in the right roles to achieve those goals.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much ground today, from diagnosing the strategic context to building a high-performing team. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for navigating leadership transitions.
And remember, it's a journey, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself, stay curious, and never underestimate the power of building strong relationships.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into successful leadership transitions.
As you embark on this exciting new chapter, remember to ask yourself, what one action step will you prioritize based on what resonated most with you today? Which of these 5 principles will be your guiding light?
So much to think about. A huge thank you to Michael Watkins for his brilliant framework and to Miguel Nogueral for sharing his invaluable real-world experience. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading with intention.